I don't want my daughters to grow up in a world where their worth is the number on the scale or how lean they are. That's absolutely ridiculous. I want them to grow up in a world where their own self-love, their ability to show up for themselves and others in a positive and meaningful way is what measures their success, right? And so I think we need to change the goalpost. And frankly, I think our society is pretty sick when it comes to this. Like for men, it's like how you look and how much money you make. And for women, it's how you look and how much you do for others, especially when it comes to self-sacrifice, right? Those two
Yeah.
things are what we've been hypnotized into thinking are our self-worth, right? That's what creates worth out there. But all of that is just needing validation from someone else outside of ourselves.
Hey, beautiful soul, and welcome to Dear Body, I'm Listening, the podcast for women living with chronic illness, invisible symptoms, and the quiet grief of feeling dismissed in your own body. I'm Donna Piper, and here we tell the truth about healing, the messy parts, the hopeful parts, and the parts no one prepared us for. This is a space for real talk, nervous system safe support, and learning to trust your body again, one breath at a time. Have you ever finished a workout and felt amazing, only to wake up the next day wondering what happened? For many people with chronic illness, movement isn't the hardest part. It's what happens afterwards. Today's conversation is about learning how to move with your body instead of constantly feeling like you're fighting against it. Welcome back to Dear Body, I'm Listening, the podcast where we stop fighting our bodies and start getting curious about what they might be telling us. Today, I am joined by Tyler Bramlett, co-founder of WeShape. After a cycling incident completely changed the course of his life, Tyler spent the next 15 years rethinking everything he believed about fitness and movement. Today, through WeShape, he has helped millions of people discover a more compassionate and sustainable relationship with movement. Tyler, welcome to Dear Body, I'm Listening. I'm so happy you're here.
Yeah, thanks for having me here, Donna. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm so excited. Like I am, genuinely. If we can start out, I always like to start kind of not like your why, more about I know you had a serious accident that happened about 15 years ago. And it, like anything, if you have chronic illness or these moments kind of shape our lives, put things
Absolutely.
into perspective. And if you don't mind sharing a little bit about that,
Yeah.
I would love to hear your story.
Awesome. Yeah, I would love to talk about that. And I'll do my best to give you the 50,000 mile view because it's quite an adventure from where I started to where I'm at today. And I think the easiest way to put it is, like most people, my journey of fitness and learning how to take care of myself started like most people's, right? We look at the magazines, nowadays it's social media, and we see that ideal body. And so what do? We shame ourselves, we criticize ourselves, and we use that as motivation to try and go do something about it. And I did just that, right? And I followed the advice from the magazines, tried to do this, bodybuilding and cardio and all this different stuff. And as luck would have it, I got hit by a car. And I say as luck would have it because, like you said, these events shape the course of our lives. Because after rehabilitating myself, I went back to the gym and I tried to do the things that I was doing before, and everything hurt. And one of the things that I realized early on, and this was a big gift from that first accident, was that when your body's in pain, you really want to get out of it. That becomes your number one goal. Most people want to change how they look, right? But when you hurt, it's like you want to do anything to change how you feel. So it's a constant reminder that separates you from this kind of more superficial goal that I think a lot of people have, and more towards caring for your body. So that's exactly what I did is I learned how to feel better in my body. But I'd be lying if I said that was the end of the story, because what actually happened was as I started to feel better, I started to orient my focus towards something else that gratified my ego, which was performance, was what could I do with my body, right? And I spent the better part of a decade just chasing that and just, getting stronger and more fit and doing all these different types of workouts and things until I ended up hurting myself a second time a decade later. And the second time has been actually a lot more challenging than the first time. Overall, now I've had 5 knee surgeries, 4 on the right, 1 on the left, and I've spent a year of my life in bed recovering from that. And the 4 of them were from that second injury where I was doing some gymnastics, chasing performance, and came down and hurt myself. And what that taught me was probably even more important than the first one, right? The first one taught me it's not about how you look, it's about how you feel. The second one taught me it's not about what you can do, it's about how long you can do it, right? And it's about how well you can do it. because both of those early pursuits, whether it was changing the way I looked or changing the way I felt, were really rooted in that ego, that like desire to like be seen and desire to show up in a way where people would validate me outside of myself. And when you hurt yourself really bad and you realize you can't go back to that anymore, it really becomes about longevity. And so that's what I've really shifted my focus towards over the years is how do I live with freedom of movement for as long as possible? Listen to my body, don't push myself to the limits all the time, give myself grace along the way, not focus on how I look, but focus on how I feel, and then teach others how to do the same. So that's been a short version of my journey thus far.
Well, it's amazing. I'm sorry that you had those 2 major accidents, but it
Yeah,
seems like how you talk about them, you look at them as a gift. So that's always good. When we learn. So we're not doing always the same thing, right? We learn from
exactly.
our life. Yeah, I have not similar. I was a dancer, I was a Pilates instructor. I mean, I have some chronic illnesses that kind of hit up against the aesthetic, but I do understand of like, doing all these things, pushing my body past the limits. And most of my listeners and myself have chronic illness and I've had chronic pain. So there is that weird, like you feel fine doing something, but for me and my listeners, if you have hypermobility EDS, POTS, migraine, ME, chronic fatigue syndrome, lipedema, it's not just the moment that you're doing it, it's like the 48 hours, 72 hours after that. So have you, like, with all of your clients and millions of people you've helped, have you come across people with those bodies that have that? And if you have,
Absolutely.
what is your take on that whole world?
Yeah, absolutely. There are some things that are more challenging than others. I'm not here to pretend like we can fix all different problems, but some of the things you listed there relate to kind of the focus of what we do now and what I
Mhm.
focus on primarily, which is a really simple principle. You're watching, you can see my shirt, it says move better. On the back, it says feel better, right? So when it comes to, for example, something like hypermobility, it's really easy to overshoot with hypermobility and end up doing little micro damages. And like you said, the next day you wake up and it's not just I'm sore, it's like my joints hurt, right? And fundamentally, what that means is we have to build the self awareness of where is the end range actually at for our joints, right? So with hypermobility, the main cause that people injure themselves, they go past their end range of motion in their joints, right? And their joints no longer become stable. I have a touch of hypermobility. That's why my knee got blown out to the side when I was in gymnastics. I was doing a punch on one of those spring floors that you see in gymnastics. I straightened my legs. My legs go a little more straight than straight, and my knee completely caved sideways, tore my ACL, MCL, LCL, quad, and meniscus because of that very feature. And it was a big lesson for me that, hypermobility, people think of this as amazing because you're naturally a little bit more flexible, but then your risk of injury goes way up, right? So that's just one circumstance here. But the fundamental principle of learning how to move better to feel better is key here, right? So migraines, what does this have to do with? So many people who carry tension in the traps, especially the upper traps and the neck muscles, that's going to exacerbate their migraine symptoms. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to go away, but if I have you doing things that makes you go like this with your shoulder shrugging up, it's going to make things a whole lot worse. And honestly, that's a movement pattern that I think a lot of people carry with them. We see a lot of people, especially women, who have that kind of tension in their neck and their traps. They have tension headaches, migraines, etc. And so we have to learn how to use all the other muscles on the other side that drop the shoulders down, that allow the muscles of the neck and the traps to relax. Because when we fire muscles on the opposite side of the body, it relaxes muscles on the other side, right? So we learn how to carry ourselves differently. And then all of a sudden that tension reduces and the likelihood of those migraines, those headaches, et cetera, can often go down for people over the course of time. So much of movement is like learning this. It's like nobody ever gave you a roadmap on how to move your body well. Right. And even if you do impressive things, you still might be doing it in a way that's risky, like I was doing. Right. And so you have to learn how to move your body well in the first place. And oftentimes that can make just about anything feel significantly better. And even if it's not going to make the pain and the chronic pain go away, say you have something like fibromyalgia, which is oftentimes a black box. It's really hard to know exactly what's going to cause that to flare up and whatnot. Still having more control, more awareness, more strength in your body can be really helpful as long as you're not pushing it too far too fast. Almost all of those things will get exacerbated when we push them too far too fast. And so baby steps is the key. I think movement is the key, not focusing on it from like exercise perspective, but more of a teaching myself how to move perspective. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. I mean, that's one of the things I talk about constantly is it's not, it's like that whole pain no gain stuff
Oh
is
my God.
so
The
not
worst.
good for this population. I don't think anyone out there, but the kind of mentality is that, I have to do more reps and that'll make me look better, feel better. When actually, especially if you have an undiagnosed chronic tissue disorder, which you had and like tons of people do. And a lot of these things that I have is connected to faulty connective tissue that's all over your
Yeah.
body. And like you said, you don't get a map of this. You're just like, get told you're hypermobile and that's about it. Like, great, you could do the splits or things might be a little easier. But as you get older, if you're unaware of those things and you're doing chronically, like your body's moving in a pathological manner, mainly just out of support, like your whole body's working overtime just to kind of make you upright, and you have no idea of these added things that you might be doing that might be the thing that pushes you into a flare or unfortunately like blows out your knee.
Yeah.
And I know you do talk about that, like your model, what I say is kind of the antithesis of like work out, go and
Yeah.
push
Yeah.
tires and, hit is probably the worst thing for people with like POTS or any sort of orthostatic thing, fibromyalgia, any chronic illness, really. High intensity is the thing that's, like, makes you flare more and then makes you feel worse because you can't do it. So,
Yeah.
what is your kinda take on the traditional kinda look of,
Fitness
like
culture out there, right?
yeah.
Yeah. I love talking about this because, admittedly, like I was hook, line, and sinker into that culture, especially in that egoic pursuit of performance phase of my life. And even afterwards, it took me a long time to really make a shift away from wanting to get that back. Even though I think the ultimate thing was I had to swallow the pill that it wasn't going to come back in the way I wanted, right? Sometimes we have injuries that prevent us from being able to do the things that we used to be able to do. And we have to learn more about acceptance than getting it back at the end of the day. But one of the biggest things I've noticed is I've been in the fitness industry now for 20 years. I've had several different companies and iterations. I've had local companies. I've been a coach. I've been a personal trainer, everything. I've helped literally hundreds, if not thousands of people lose a ton of weight. I've seen hundreds of people lose over 100 pounds, right? And in this old model of intensity and pushing yourself hard and expending as much energy as you can so that you can look the best you can. What I found was even the people who lose 100 pounds, when they end up at that place, they don't actually feel that much better about themselves. And I know this is counterintuitive, but if you start your journey with, I hate my body and I need to do something about it, at the end of that journey, if all you've done is use hatred and self-hatred as motivation, well, then you've rehearsed a lot of that. You've gotten really good at not liking yourself. And so at the very end, you might give yourself some kudos and people will give you some validation along the way. But I often found that every single one of those clients would go, now I got to work on this. Now I got to work on that. Now I got to work on this. Now I got to work on that. There's this eternal dislike and unhappiness with your body. And we get stuck in that. And I realized that that's only some people. Some people are great at using shame for motivation. Most people, what actually happens is they do the same thing as those people and they give up on themselves because it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So they end up starting and stopping and starting and stopping over and over again for years and decades. I call it the one step forward, one step backward game. What happens when we do one step forward, one step backward for decades? We go nowhere, right? And I think at the end of the day, people need to realize that the mindset around the fitness industry, it's a toxic mindset. To shame yourself or use self-hatred or self-judgment to create motivation is not healthy for your mind and it's not healthy for your body in the long run because you will ignore your body's signals to slow down, to take more time, to rest more, to give yourself grace, to practice things a little bit more diligently in favor of pushing yourself harder. And that's how I got hurt. That's how probably a lot of the people on the calls got hurt right now who are listening.
Mhm.
And I think it's really good for people to recognize that this hasn't worked. It hasn't worked, Donna. I was on a live call. We do these challenges at WeShape, and we were talking about somebody's why, their intentions, like why they're here. And I asked people, okay, I want to ask you a quick question. How many routines have you started and stopped on because it didn't work out for you? And if you don't know, say 20 plus, right? Every single comment on that call, there's hundreds of people on the call, was 20 plus. Every single one of them. Not a single person posted anything other than 20 plus. And I'm like, if that's not evidence that this doesn't work, I don't know what is, right? And so what's the counter to that? The counter to that is I have this one body that I was born in, that I get to live in, and that eventually I'm going to die in. All right. And if I want to feel good in my body, I don't need to push my body. I don't necessarily need to lose weight to make this happen. What I need is to take care of my body. And I need to develop a different approach psychologically. So instead of looking at myself in the mirror and going, oh, you're disgusting, you need to go do this workout, and while I'm there pushing myself and ignoring the signals that my body's sending me, I need to look in the mirror and say, you know what? You're worthy of care. You've carried me for my entire life. You'll continue to carry me for the rest of my life, and nobody's going to choose to take care of you but me. And if we can start cultivating more self-worth, if we can start showing up and taking care of our body from a place of self-love rather than self-judgment, that's what I've watched people go from not being able to stay consistent with anything to then all of a sudden being able to stick to it. Because it's no longer packaged with all this negative feelings. Because when we do things that feel bad consistently, do we want to keep doing it? Right? No, eventually we want to give up. It's like, this sucks. I don't want to do this anymore. But if we do things and we can figure out how to make it feel good, then we want to do more of it. Right. And so that's the mindset thesis behind everything that we do at WeShape, is that we need to flip the model from self-hatred as fuel to self-love as fuel. And when we do that, we'll go a little slower. We'll listen to those signals rather than ignore them. We'll take care of our body rather than punish our body for what we ate yesterday or how we look. And ultimately, I think, especially for people who are listening to this or who are in your position, I think it's going to be a much better approach for them. It's going to be an approach that makes their bodies last a lot longer, helps them take better care of their bodies a lot longer, and gives them permission to say, you know what, that doesn't feel good, so I'm not going to do it, right? Which is such a big part of the fitness culture these days, that no pain, no gain. So we always say, throw that out. It's not about exercise. Quit exercising. It's about practicing movement. It's not about quantity. It's about quality, right?
I love that.
I think most people are looking for more simplicity these days. That's one reason I appreciate Azure's Standard. At first, I thought it was just about groceries. Then, I discovered gardening supplies, pantry staples, household products, and so many of the other things we use every day. They've spent over 30 years delivering clean, organic groceries and earth-friendly products to families who care about what goes on their plates and into their lives. Everything they offer is rooted in real nutrition, transparency, and trust. What I like is that it encourages a different mindset. Instead of constantly running to the store, you begin thinking about your home differently. You stock your pantry, you plan family meals, maybe you plant a garden. You become a little more intentional about what you bring into your home. That's what abundance means to me. Experience new products and stock up on your favorites during this month's Waves of Abundance sales. Discover a simpler, healthier way to shop for the things that matter most at azurestandard.com. That's AZURE standard.com.
Because it is a nice, simple shift, but you're not saying not to move. You're just how you approach your movement.
Yeah.
But I do feel, even for myself and I'm an old school Pilates teacher, so I'm not like fast and furious. It's very slow and methodical. But, it's hard, I think, to get people to shift that way if you're not traditionally like more sweat, like you're not, like I'm not a pounder. Oh, you got to do it. I motivate people, but I never have been like, oh, do 50 things, do crazy things. But even for myself, what I was able to do and what I'm not now, and you mentioned that briefly, it's difficult to kind of figure out what your limits are and how to shift it and what that means. And there's a philosophy to embrace, but then there's the reality of that arc to go through it. When you're doing stuff and you realize you can't do that much anymore, you can't do this one thing that was like super easy for you forever. And, a lot of women retroactively, like I'm 55, so just got diagnosed with all my stuff like 3 years ago, and I've had it my whole life. And one of the things is lipedema. It's a connective tissue disorder that's also a fat disorder. And what happens is that your connective tissue doesn't hold things appropriately, and then you have this fat disorder where the fat doesn't behave like normal fat. So there's no amount of starvation, diet, exercise, whatever, that will get rid of the diseased tissue. Like you can help it around, but really right now, surgery is the only intervention. So most women that are heavy, fat, they go to doctors or whatever, and they're told they're obese. And even going into fitness classes, I know I experienced it. Like, I'm really strong underneath, like my DEXA scan, all this stuff is really good, but like I have fat on top of it. So there is a perception, like if you're fat, that you're lazy, you need to be pushed more, you need to eat less. There's a lot of lifestyle judgments, no matter just on body shape, other than not taking into account all these things. And so I was pretty educated in most things, and I didn't even know I had it for decades. And it's been around for a while, but more people, it's not like studied, unfortunately. Like, what is your kind of model to help people get from like, oh my God, if I am not walking an hour a day, doing weights for 30 minutes, going heavy, eating 900 calories, like my world is like, it means that I'm going to get fat or I'm not going to be able to meet my goals, to switch it over to listen to the signals and feed yourself. Like, what do you, I know there was a lot in there, but like, what is your kind of philosophy with like to bridge that gap to make people really embrace this? I'm motivating myself to move because I want to learn how my body moves and what it needs, and not what I was told externally by, you know,
Yeah.
trainer.
Let's break this apart, right? Because there's a few things that you're touching on here that I think are worth mentioning. First is I love to tell people, I do not want to be your guru. I want to teach you how to be your own guru. All right. So I think when people often join up in some sort of fitness class or program or something like that, they're really looking for someone else to tell them what to do. And there's nothing wrong with someone giving you a framework of what to do, but what they should be doing is telling you what you should be doing, but telling you how you should feel it, telling you how you should experience it, telling you to deeply listen to your body. But the opposite's what's happening. You know, we've already talked about this. People jump on the treadmill and they watch a show or they listen to their music and they're not paying attention to what's happening in their body. They're pushing themselves. And so many people that I talk to, like, we're disconnected from the neck down. We're so in our heads, but we're not so in our bodies. And to me, what that means is even if you go do an exercise class, you're basically doing mindless exercise. You're not thinking about the alignment of your body. You're not thinking about how things should feel as much. You're not connecting with your body. And when we disconnect from our body, of course it's impossible for us to be able to say that feels off or I shouldn't be doing that, right? Because we're giving our power away to someone else who we think might know what's best for us. But I promise you, if we are able to mindfully move, if we're able to listen to our bodies, if we're able to feel inside our bodies again, you start to build that awareness back, right? So that's why we focus always mindful movement. And for most people, it's taking like 10 steps backward so we can take 20 steps forward. It's like learning what it feels like to squeeze the right muscles in a safe position. It's learning how the joints are supposed to track. It's learning how to integrate the feet, the knees, the hips, the core when we do daily movement. So that way, when we're actually getting up from a chair or walking or going up and down stairs, we're doing it mindfully, right? And the better connection we build with our body, the more clear it sends signals back to our mind that tell us when something's right and when something's wrong. And I had to learn this one the hard way too. That second injury I got when I was there, it was just push yourself. I'm going to do this punch. My coach was like, you got to punch harder. And my body was telling me, stop, this is feeling weird. And I was like, you shut up, buddy. I'm going to punch as hard as I possibly. I'm going to show this coach the hardest punch he's ever seen. And boom, and my knee went completely sideways. And that's where that injury came from. So it was a pivotal lesson for me that not listening to my body is where all of my injuries came from. Learning how to listen to my body is where I was able to know my limits, where I was able to understand when I need to back off of stuff or when I need to have someone who's really skilled teach me how that's supposed to work instead of just doing something and thinking it's the right way. So many people go to a fitness class and they never speak up, right? So speak up. If something doesn't feel right, like really focus on it. And often, like again, don't go in thinking intensity. Your first like 10, 20 sessions with somebody who's really good at coaching movement should be like pretty easy. You know, not easy from a coordination perspective. It's going to work on your mind and like feeling things, but not like physically intense. You're not going to walk away feeling crazy sore or beat up from it, right? More just like, wow, it's really hard for me to focus on all those things to get this right. You know, so I think people need to shift their mindset away from mindless exercise and move towards mindful so they can cultivate that connection with themselves. Okay. So that's really important. Second thing I want to talk about is body image. Okay. Our society has brainwashed us into thinking that all bodies should be skinny, low body fat, lean, and if you're not that, you should hate yourself, right? That's literally what the fitness industry has taught us. And I want to be real with everybody out here. I know this so well because I used to do the same thing as every other fitness company out there. I would go on camera and I'd make an ad and I'd say, yeah, if you don't like the way your belly looks right now and you want it to be flatter in just the next 2 weeks, then here's what you got to do, right? Because that's what everybody does. If we can make people feel crappy about themselves and we can make them believe that our solution will make them feel good about themselves, then what happens? They spend money on our solution. Okay. So we need to understand that the fitness industry's psychology is not built around healthy psychology. It's built around marketing. Okay. And that's where WeShape turned everything around for me. I was one of the proudest moments in my life, Donna, was turning off all these companies that were successful, that were making a lot of money, that I just didn't align with who I was anymore. Right. There was this transitionary period where my wife brought this to my attention, that so much of what the fitness industry does creates negativity in people's minds. I started noticing in my older daughter that she was showing early signs of body dysmorphia and eating disorders. And I realized, oh my God, I'm a part of the problem. Right. And I knew it needed to change. And so one of the things that we do with people is we try to take them away from this culture that says skinny means you're healthy. Skinny means you're successful. Your worth lies in the number on the scale. And instead we say, what you do to take care of your body is what matters, right? And the truth is, we're all different shaped people. We have different bone structures. We have different health ailments that come across our way. And a lot of that stuff, we think we have control over it. But the truth is we don't. We really don't. And so what's really important here is not what happens from the things that you do. It's whether or not you're showing up, right? And so to me, I want people to measure their self-worth in terms of the actions they're taking to take care of themselves, not in terms of the outcomes they're hoping will come from those actions. And if we can just focus on, I am showing up today, and I'm really proud of myself for doing those stretches I needed to do, doing those movements I needed to do, doing a meditation to help me learn to accept myself better, analyzing my inner critic and noticing these phrases that people installed in me early on from the fitness industry that I need to turn around and start becoming my inner cheerleader, right? That's the work we should be celebrating. That's the work that we should take pride in and feel really proud of, right? I don't want my daughters to grow up in a world where their worth is the number on the scale or how lean they are. That's absolutely ridiculous. I want them to grow up in a world where their own self-love, their ability to show up for themselves and others in a positive and meaningful way is what measures their success, right? And so I think we need to change the goalpost. And frankly, I think our society is pretty sick when it comes to this. Like for men, it's like how you look and how much money you make. And for women, it's how you look and how much you do for others, especially when it comes to self-sacrifice, right? Those two things are what we've been hypnotized into thinking are our self-worth, right? So that's what creates worth out there. But all of that is just needing validation from someone else outside of ourselves. And so if we start reorienting towards the things that I do to show up for myself are what create my self-worth, because I'm actually showing up and consistently taking care of myself and I feel good about that. Like that's what comes from within. Then we don't need the other stuff from outside of ourselves. And I want to be clear, like this is not a 30-day journey, right? This is a multi-year journey. This is a journey of being willing to maybe open up some black boxes that we locked up tight that we don't want to touch with a 10-foot pole and face them head on. And so, with WeShape, so much of what I think about is we use movement as a Trojan horse, right? So we start with movement. Hey, if this bothers you, try this. And we want people to have that immediate experience of, wow, I changed the way I moved and I felt better. And I'm happy. That makes me feel good that I took care of myself and I felt better. Cool. Yeah, we just did something positive for ourselves. And then once we get somebody kind of experiencing that a little bit, then we start asking deeper questions. Like, wait, why are you here? Right? And then they go, well, I'm here because I want to lose weight. And you're like, well, why do you want to lose weight? And they're like, well, because my doctor said that if I need to lose weight, otherwise I'm not going to be healthy. Well, why does that opinion matter to you? And if you keep asking those why questions, you start to discover that people, they just want to be able to move their bodies freely. They want to be able to take care of themselves and the people around them. They want to be able to experience life to its fullest. And like that is deep. That's meaningful. That's inspirational. The superficial stuff that always rises to the top first, it's the stuff that's rooted in self-hatred. It doesn't last, and it doesn't make people have the self-worth necessary to be able to make this a real habit in their lives, right? So I don't know if I answered your question there.
No,
but
you did. Answered all of it.
Yeah.
It's because it is that, and it's kind of an external imposed self-image of that these are the values that are kind of collectively agreed upon
Yeah.
and then brainwashed too, and no one really can meet that or fit that. So everyone has like a different push-pull with it at some point. And so my next question was gonna ask you more to talk about WeShape, and I like that you kind of brought it in, but how do people get involved, or tell me what you would like to tell me initially about WeShape? I'm sure I have more questions, but
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, let me just say one more thing too, because you just mentioned it right there. The standard we're weighing ourselves against is often an impossible standard. In fact, the people that we're weighing ourselves against, probably the photos you're looking at aren't even real anymore, right? And so we just need to pause for a second and realize, like, we're comparing ourselves to people who are either like putting their entire life into looking a certain way. And if you really met them, I've gotten to interview lots of fitness models and people like this that you think you'd strive towards, and most of them are miserable. Their hormones tank. They feel crappy about themselves all the time. They're constantly nitpicking and judging themselves. They never go have fun experiences with people because they got to weigh and measure every little thing they do. I don't want to live like that. Nobody wants to live like that. I promise you, if you could transport yourself into their lives, you'd immediately realize this is a worthless pursuit. It's not something that's worth pursuing. And what's
and it's
more,
not sustainable,
it's not
really,
sustainable.
over
It'll fade no
decades.
matter what, right?
Where there's always, like you said, there's hormones, there's always at some point you will kind of pay for either under eating or overtraining.
Yeah.
Like your body will is amazing that it does so many things behind the scenes just to kind of keep you alive, even if you're inundating it with so many things that it doesn't want or need. And then eventually something will shift and you'll have to kind of figure out what you've been doing to your body. So
Yeah.
and if you can combat that, or even if traditional working out is, because movement does heal, I believe that. But if all you're offered is traditional kind of movement with mindset of like this much load, like
Yeah.
more just the general things and the aesthetic, and striving for some sort of burn or some sort of soreness is an evaluation of how the workout was, and not really like, okay, how did I learn how to take like different muscles of my body and activate them at the same time? And
Yeah.
how did I go along that process to understand what that feels for me and how to do that, which is much more complicated. It takes way more energy and it's way more beneficial, but it doesn't always equate with, oh, is my muscle sore? Oh, did I feel
Yeah.
the burn? So
Yeah.
people, and that education process, you know, everyone's a little different, but some people are a little more difficult to kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
move the line.
Yeah.
But back to reshape with this, like, so how do people get involved? And is that, do they come because they have some chronic pain and injury like you had, or do they just like show up and like, I have, I want to lose weight, or they come in all kind of
Yeah.
streams to you?
There's a lot of different packages that come in, but I would say that probably the most common is someone who feels like they aren't able to do the fitness programs out there anymore. They've tried a bunch of fitness programs. They've constantly feel like they weren't the right fit for them. Maybe they have some injuries or some aches that they can't really figure out how to solve, and they're just frustrated. They're like fed up, right? They're like, how do I change this around, right? And, what we do with WeShape is I really tried to visualize what the experience would be for somebody when they came in. Because I'll be honest with you, when I was a personal trainer, I had already gone through injuries. I already rehabilitated myself. And then after my second injury, I worked with people as well. And what I ultimately realized was like most personal trainers at gyms, a lot of the fitness programs out there, these are people who were like athletes. They're already fit. They probably haven't had very many injuries in their life. And they don't understand what it's like to live in a body that's prone to injuries or has pain or has some serious injuries that need to be addressed, right? And so most people give you a cookie cutter program. They have you do some weights and machines and like some cardio, stuff like that. And just, oh, if you just do this and push yourself, then everything's going to be fine, right? And I remember when I was a trainer, just really despising that. I told myself way back then, like, I want to figure out how to give somebody a really good experience. And, when we started building WeShape, we were in a very interesting position because like I said, we had some successful fitness businesses, but we turned them off. And I said, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do this kind of marketing. I don't want to push people. I want to focus on how do we help people connect with themselves more and give them experience of being able to be guided towards that connection, guided towards how to move properly, but in a way that was tailored to them. because probably the most important thing that I think is neglected in the fitness industry is that your body is unique. My body is unique. Everyone out there is going to have different aches, pains, and injuries, different issues they're dealing with, different movement dysfunctions that they have in their body. And that means like one program doesn't work for everybody, period. Right? But everybody should be able to stand up from a chair or get down on the floor and stand back up or walk pain-free or go for a hike or go up and down stairs, right? Or reach overhead and put a dish in the cabinet overhead, right? These are fundamental movements of the human body that create the freedom to do what we want to do again. And so when we built this program, what we did is we took something called a movement progression, right? So for people who aren't aware of this, any movement can be broken down into a progression of less or more complicated versions of that movement. Great example, let's say standing up from a chair, right? A lot of people, surprisingly, can't stand up from a chair without pain, okay? And so how do we help them with that? First, we teach them how to do it properly, and we teach them how to do that assisted with their hands. If they can't even do that, we'll take them all the way down to the chair. We'll do isometric contractions, getting them to properly use their muscles in good alignment, but not even doing any movement, which is very safe for people with joint injuries and a lot of these conditions you've been talking about as well. If they can't even do that, we'll do it lying in bed, right? So we can start anybody from, I can't even sit up in bed, and gradually take them from that to taking some steps up, to learning how to do sit-to-stands, to maybe doing those faster and conditioning the ankles, and then eventually maybe even being able to jump and land pain-free again. But we don't do that on day one. We don't do that with poor alignment or poor awareness of how the body moves. And so what we do with WeShape is, instead of bringing somebody in and giving you a program without asking you questions, I wanted people to have something that was tailored to them. So we created basically a software that asks you about 50 different questions. We're asking people, what are their goals? Where are they tight? Where are they weak? Where do they have injuries? And we ask them a bunch of movement-specific questions. Which one of these can you do? Or you can't do this because you're in too much pain. We take all that data and we pull it into our database. And we have this system that has like 9,000 different video files. So we can generate a follow-along workout for every single individual. And every single individual's workout is unique to them. And what I love about this too is not even is it unique to them, the movements in their routine, the levels for these different movements based on what they're focusing on, but I want it to, like, again, I want the experience to be like having a personal trainer. And if I had somebody walk in and I had a great idea of what they should be doing that day, but they're like, I slept like crap, my body feels like crap, am I just going to give them the same routine, or am I going to adjust it? So we built all that into the app itself. Like before you start a routine, we're like, how'd you sleep last night? How does your body feel right now? How much time do you have right now? And based on those answers, it'll generate the routine for you that day. Right. So we're always trying to meet people where they're at. Yeah. Yeah. I love it. It's amazing. So,
I mean, that is like amazing technology.
Yeah. One thing I'll say about WeShape is, had I known how difficult this was going to be to build, I probably wouldn't have done it from the start. So, we're like 4 years deep, and I've spent countless hours and dollars and energy on getting this to a good place. But, right now we've got thousands of people using WeShape on a daily basis, and every single person's routine is different. Right. So I think that's one aspect of WeShape, is trying to deliver a movement system that gives people the sense of how to move their bodies in their environment in a way that feels good. Everything is follow along, but everything is scalable, and it's scalable in real time too. You can even like do the routine. You're like, this is too hard. You click too hard in that follow along workout. It'll make the movement even easier for you. Or if it's too easy, you can make it more challenging for you. So the goal is, over time, can we get them to gradually scale up the difficulty of the movements, which requires more strength, flexibility, control, coordination, etc. And that's what makes people generally feel better, being able to move their bodies in their real environment. Everything we do is body weight. All you need is usually a chair or a towel or something like that. We want it to be inclusive as possible. And on top of that, we do live calls. Myself, we have a physical therapist on staff, Dr. Lisa, who does live calls with our team. We want people to feel supported along the way and be able to ask their questions. We have a therapist on staff who specializes in body image. So this is addressing that exact issue that you were talking about as well. We do support group calls as well for people who are just struggling and just need some support to feel motivated along the way. We do coaching for people who want one-on-one experience as well. We've just recently started doing retreats now, and it's been my favorite thing we've added to the mix, is actually getting 40 or so people out to our hometown here for a few days, working on movement and mindset and just celebrating community at the same time. And it's just been a wild journey, but I really love that we're basically telling the fitness industry we're not going to do it your way anymore. We're going to do it a different way. And I think the people who have found us are really resonating with that message. So I couldn't be more happy with what's happening. Yeah.
Amazing. And all the work. I have so many technical questions that I won't ask you, but I'm like,
yeah. If you ever just want to nerd out separately on the back end.
It just made me like, wow, you did a lot of anyway.
Yeah, we wrote
So
it's an algorithm. We
okay.
wrote an algorithm at the end of the day. Myself and my CTO put this together, and it's an if this then this library. And then the more somebody engages with the movements, the smarter it gets because it's really learning about how you move. And really, the way I'm kind of a math nerd at heart, and so the way I thought about it was always just like, if I was to work with one person as a trainer, how would I show up in every possible scenario I could think of? And how do we build that into something that somebody could access? So my goal has always been, can I deliver a better experience and better results for somebody in terms of how they feel and their control and their confidence and awareness of their body than if they worked with someone else in person? Right? Like that's my win right there. If I can make all the trainers go out of business and give somebody like, a real solid coach that can really teach them how to do this stuff, that would be a big win for me,
And that was you answered it already, but the more they interact with it, they kind of remember your profile, they remember what they could do.
Yeah.
So if they're having an off day
Yeah.
or whatever,
That's
then
right.
it kind of remembers the next time. So these questions, so they might
That's
go
right.
back
Yeah.
or start again to kind of build.
Yeah,
That's
exactly. Yeah. And
that is a feat within itself.
yeah,
Like
thank you.
you should be so proud just
I
to
am
have
proud.
a
Yeah.
functional thing that can relate because it's true. Your body does not respond. It's not like the same thing over and
Yeah.
over. You do need
You need different stuff. Yeah.
variety. You need things in order to get stronger. Doing the same thing over and over is just going to usually wear
Yeah.
things out other
Yeah.
than make you better. So that you have all that, that's very impressive.
Yeah,
So,
thank you. One more thing I wanted to mention to you. This isn't really for the audience, so I'm just going to nerd out with you for a
yeah.
sec. But you mentioned something earlier, which is like the goalpost is always measured by the scale, right? Or body fat percentage, maybe is one of those. Or maybe some people use BMI, which is just ridiculous at the end of the day. But what we did is we have this inside the app, but this is really more useful when we're working with clients in our coaching capacity. We quantified their movement. We created movement scores. We quantified their strength, their mobility, their balance, their core strength, and their overall movement coordination. And we put those scores inside someone's dashboard. Now, the downside is that we launched this earlier this year, and the scores moved slower than I was hoping. And so I don't think people are watching their scores and getting excited that their movement score went from a 32 to a 33, right, at the end of the day over the course of a month. But, having worked with some clients and watching them over 6 months or over the course of 8 months and seeing those movement scores go from, for example, their core strength might be an 18 when we start, it might be a 45 6 months later. What does that mean in their environment? It's like, oh, I can go from
huge.
laying down on the floor to like standing back up because I have so much more stability. So why I'm mentioning that is you said like, we don't have a way to quantify this. And we do. We have a way to clearly quantify someone's ability to move their body. And the more we see those numbers go up, the more freedom that person has to express their body in their environment. And to me, that's what it's all about. Because when people come to us, the experience they're having is that their world is shrinking. They're walking up the stairs and going, oh my God, I don't feel safe doing this anymore, right? They're realizing I got to grab somebody or I got to grab onto a chair or something to get up off the floor. Like, oh my God, this is like new to me. I used to have that freedom of movement. And so what WeShape is about learning how to get that freedom of movement back by learning how to move your body the right way and then gradually sophisticating that to make sure that you're continuously gaining more movement capacity over time. So to me, it's about freedom. It's about freedom and not losing your capabilities as time goes on. Yeah.
And not that you're saying you gamified it, but it is nice that you give people some real, people look at numbers, they look at that, but that you could say your strength went from here to here
Yeah.
and not just a feeling and it's not aesthetic. It's actually based on, your algorithms, all these things.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool because that is motivating. Like, when you have something like that. So that's an extra added thing, I think, in your app that really is probably, even if it doesn't like only 1% at a time or how much
Yeah, exactly.
overall, you can be like, not only do I feel better because I can do the dishes and take a shower and do laundry in one day, which I maybe had to pick one before,
Right.
but now I also could tell you I started here and here I am.
Here. Yeah. Exactly.
And it didn't have to go through all this pain. I didn't have to hustle. I didn't have to kill myself.
Yeah.
All of those things.
And that's probably the most interesting thing that I think people have the experience with us. When they come in, if they haven't built a good habit around movement or exercise in general, right? I think the biggest mistake people do is they're like, okay, this is the time. I'm going to do an hour 5 days a week. And like, that just doesn't work, right? It's way too divergent from your current lifestyle to be able to be consistent in. And I'm like, hey, let's start with 2 10-minute routines a week. Right. And the amount of people who start with us and do 2 10-minute routines a week for a month or 2 months or 3 months, and then they go to 2 20-minute routines, they go to 3 20-minute routines, and they go to 3 30-minute routines. And oftentimes I'm like, hey, you don't have to do much more than that. If you do 3 really mindful 30-minute routines a week and you do that consistently and you don't measure your results in like what happens in weeks or a month, but you measure it in what happens in like a year or 2 years, that's the kind of progress that I love to see people have, right? It's the I couldn't go down the stairs or up the stairs without pain. We had a person telling us the other day she went on a hike when she was on a European trip. She did 3 miles of stairs and was like, I couldn't even go up a staircase before, right? But she had been with us for 2 years, consistently practicing. And so, I think that if people can just realize that so much of this quick fix fitness industry stuff and shame-based marketing is really just that. It's marketing and trying to get you to like get excited about something that probably actually won't work for you because none of it's really worked in the past. And start realizing, what's actually important is showing up and taking care of my body a few days a week, even starting with just 2 10-minute, sessions. That's where it starts. And then cultivating that consistency from there is really the key.
And that's what's really exciting about it. I mean, it's exciting for your company, but in movement in general and seeing progression. Because for chronic pain, you said you were in a bed for a year, so you probably might have experienced this too.
Yeah.
Like you're doing well, and then all of a sudden you kind of slide
Oh,
back,
yeah.
but it's part of that, like, you climb a peak of a mountain, maybe you go into a valley. You're still maybe on this big mountain like the Himalayas, but there's peaks and valleys as you progress,
Yeah.
and to have some like an app or some people or your community kind of give you some feedback of like, you have to remember you're not all the way back. This one setback
Yeah.
is more kind of evolution of life, right?
Yeah.
There's peaks and valleys. You can't just always go up. There needs some time to whatever, rest, recharge for whatever happens. You might have a flare, you might be learning something
Yeah.
about your body, and it does give you the time to learn about your body because you're not
Yeah.
going to learn what your body really needs and how much movement you are just in a month or
Yeah.
a week. I would love that to happen like, oh, you
No,
have this
it's
thing, you get like, you understand your body instantly and you can make it happen. But that's just not the reality of it.
yeah.
You do need seasons, 2 years, like a year, 2 years to figure out how your body behaves in different weather factors. Like I also have MCAS and things like that, and we talked about migraine. Those a lot of things are dictated by, oddly, weather, smells, environment. So
Yeah.
having your program, it sounds like it gives a nice base where people can feel safe
Yeah.
because they're interacting with you, but an app, and hopefully they're not judging themselves. I think we're always our brain is the biggest critic. We don't have a firewall. Like
Yeah.
what we would say to ourselves sometimes, we wouldn't probably say out loud to other people
Sure.
mostly. So
Yeah.
there's hard to manage that because you don't have like a hard stop. But the app that gives you some positive things and it's just your interaction. So if you do feel uncomfortable or
Yeah.
if you just can't get out of the house, then this gives a very viable and supportive way, it sounds like, to structure your movement, not just to get better at movement, but to also kind of understand where you are, appreciate that whole accept where you are versus, resign. That's a whole other conversation. But, with movement, with having chronic pain, there's, oftentimes you could feel like you
Yeah.
could resign, like this is it and kind of give up. But acceptance
Yeah.
is like, I have this. And every day might feel one day might be great, one day might be worse, but I don't have to give up. I still have movement does feed me and benefit me. I just have to figure it out, which is
Yeah.
kind of hard and frustrating. I know for me with chronic illness and all this stuff, like I like to figure stuff out. I'm very cerebral that way. My body has been my best challenge in that because I don't have like a nice roadmap. I have to really kind of
Yeah.
honor what it is, what it's telling me. And, my relationship with that fluctuates. Some days it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I got this. Other days I'm like, WTF? Like, what's going on?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
But you
what?
learn, right? Like one thing that
Yes.
you said there that really stood out to me was, after these knee surgeries and rehabilitations and everything, right? It's like after the first one, it's like, wow, I learned like all these things that were really important for me to be able to figure out how to get my knee to work properly. After the second one, oh, here's some new challenges I had to learn. Third one, more challenges, more challenges. But here's the thing, they build on each other. Right? Like I could rehabilitate a knee with my eyes closed at this point now because of all the different problems that I've had to overcome. And when you learn how your body's supposed to feel, how your body's supposed to move, and you build that connection with it, that doesn't go away. You can get stronger and you can lose weight and then get injured and then get weaker and gain weight and it all went away, right? But if you learn how to fundamentally move, as soon as you're up and moving around, that all that knowledge, it stays with you, right? So there's something that's so much more valuable to me when it comes to taking your whole exercise practice and throwing it in the trash and considering it like a movement practice, like where you really focus on embodied movement and connection with self and developing in the knowledge of how things are supposed to feel and how you're supposed to move, because that lasts a lifetime at the end of the day.
It really does. And getting done with surgery, I'm just thinking how beneficial something like this would be for one of my girlfriend's dads had a stroke. Luckily, it wasn't that bad. They were able to get in and do a carotid artery clean out.
Mm.
But he, learning to move again and have this movement and he is housebound and things like that. Like this kind of technology is, I do love technology because that you could create something. I mean, it's very like, 20 years ago, this wasn't available to have this
Yeah,
kind of platform and this kind of algorithm.
that's
And
right.
it's only going to get better as you have
Yeah,
the people on the app and as you learn more about it and, your passion about how you want to help people learn about their
yeah,
fitness is only going to expand. So
yeah, 100%.
that's so awesome that you created this. So how can people find you and what is the best way to interact if they have
Yeah.
questions?
Yeah. Well, we set up a special link. If they go to WeShape, WESHAPE.com/Dear Body, they will be taken to our movement assessment. So that's those questions I told you that we ask people before they come in and try a routine. After that, you can try it for 2 weeks for free and give it a shot. At the end of the day, I want people to experience it for themselves. I know that if you do it, you'll love it and you'll probably stay and you'll want to be a part of the community. And if you don't, then there's no harm at all, right? Because you get to try it out for free. And then while you're there, come say hi on a call. I host the movement calls on Mondays. We do some challenges as well that focus on movement and mindset. I host those calls. And we have an incredible team hosting calls like Monday through Friday, several times a day for other questions. So, there's a lot of support there. And we have a community too integrated in the app. So, kind of like a social media feed where people can support each other. And the people, I don't know how we did this, but the people who showed up and found WeShape are just incredible. I mean, like really, really downright incredible people. And so I'm so grateful for not just our team, but like all the members here are just awesome. They're so supportive of each other. So yeah, that's probably the best way. You can check us out on social media. Just go type in WeShape anywhere. We've also got a podcast called Feeling Lighter, which is a lot more dedicated to our mindset side of things. So yeah, you can find us pretty much anywhere using those things.
Okay. And like always, I'll have all the show notes and all those links in down below. But for people that are just listening and just want to go right on and get on the app, is it something they download or do they just, it's the process of like go to that
Yeah,
website
yeah.
thing
Go to that
first
website,
and
go
then
through it,
it'll
and then you
give you the
download the app and
correct.
get you everything.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Tyler, for your time
That.
and really for your passion and your creativity and your math knowledge, obviously, to create such an integrative algorithm with like, I hope that my hope has been for a long time, but especially in the last few years since I've been really sick, that fitness does go into this place,
Yeah,
that it
yeah,
is more rooted in movement and mindfulness and not just a one-off like, "Oh, I'm gonna be more mindful," like, really teaching people what that means and having their own experience, so fitness, the culture does kinda need to be shifted to meet people where they're at, and most people are just normal people. Maybe they have injured they get older, they might have some pain, they might have some this and that, and they need somewhere to go where they feel understood and not feel shamed or felt bad about taking rest or taking care of their body and or speaking up and saying, hey, I don't feel this. I don't understand. My body doesn't do this. Can you help me out?
Yeah.
Because that personal touch to that, I think, is key because, as you said a few times, but just to make a little point on it, everybody is different. Everybody needs something different, and everybody's going to process it a little bit differently, and they'll need to hear something special or something a little slightly tailored to them in
Yep.
order to make it hit home, and that you have not only the app, but also all these lovely live interactions and your retreat. Let's add that to it too. So
Yeah.
for anyone that goes, that joins the WeShape, there is that possibility of in-person connection, which I think is so important. So do you have any final words about anything? Did I miss anything you really wanted to say or talk about today in the last few minutes?
No, I just hope that anybody listening just really takes this as an opportunity to shift the way that they show up when it comes to their fitness routine. It's not about pushing yourself and judging yourself and trying to change how you look. It's about accepting yourself and learning how to appreciate your body and using that as fuel to show up and take care of it at the end of the day.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, having a loving, supportive community always helps.
Yeah. Big.
That reflective back, other than being in another kind of world of how you think you should be. But
Yeah.
so thank you for creating this whole community and
You're welcome.
pushing this towards a different change in the fitness industry. And thank you everyone for listening. Again, I'll have all the information in the show notes. And thank you again, Tyler, so much for being on today.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to Dear Body, I'm Listening. If this episode helped you feel a little more seen, a little more steady, or a little less alone in what your body has been carrying, share it with someone who might need that too. And remember, there's nothing wrong with you. You've just been living in a body that hasn't been understood. Until next time, keep listening gently.